Good morning, everyone. As you can read from the title, my talk is on Nathusius pipistrelles in bed boxes near Sertogenbos, the city where I live. A wheel is a place where the river broke through the dike, and you get this lake, which you see on the picture. Actually, the presentation is a bit different from what I saw this morning on my laptop, but I hope everything turns out all right. Near my house, some 10 minutes by bike, are these bed boxes with Nathusius, which I want to tell you some things about. I've been working on bats now for over 30 years. I started as a youth in the Nederlandse Heelbond voor Natuurstudie on bats, and the Dutch Youth Organization for Nature Study in English. And most of it is voluntary work. Also the work I do on these bed boxes is voluntary work. But since 1988 I also do part-time professional work on bats. And apart from that, I also work as an illustrator. Most of you might know this book, A Field Guide to European Mammals, which was published 2 years ago, for which I did the illustrations. And recently Herman Limpertz and me made this brochure on bats and fortresses. If you're interested, I brought some copies I can hand out. Just for your introduction, most of you will know this, but just to make sure that you know, Nathusius pipistrelle is regarded as a migratory species, traveling over long distances. Ringing has revealed that they can cover distances of up to more than 1,000 kilometers. Peter is 2,000. I'm sure you're going to correct me some more during this talk. He's one of the European experts on Nathusius. So, even so, there are still some questions regarding this migration, and I think the results from the bed box partly answer these questions. So, can you monitor a species which is actually on the way? If so, how reliable are these results? So, can you monitor bats that are on the move? The location of the Grote Wiel is near Sertogenbos, next to the river Maas. It's really in the river area. Here's a detailed map of the situation. The numbers are the locations of the bed boxes, so they're around this lake. Here on Google Earth you see there's a lot of water in this surrounding, which I think is a very important factor for Nathusius. Here in detail, there's this, you can see it's the place where the dike broke through. You get these round lakes, pretty deep, because of the water takes the soil away as it keeps streaming out of the river into the land. And you get this typical, you see several of these wielen. I don't know any German, English name for it. But it's a typical phenomena for a river area and the dikes, where the dikes broke through in the past. Well, it's Holland, 2012, so there's lots of developments. One of the developments very prominent at this moment is the making of a canal. The blue line you see, that's where the canal is going to be, and they're actually digging it at this moment. This forest has disappeared. This tree line mostly has disappeared, and these trees are gone for this construction business. So, will this work have influence on these bats in these bed boxes? I hope the other positive developments will be a marsh zone around this lake in this area. So there's developments in two directions, positive and negative. So question is, how will it turn out? Type of bed box we use is this. It's a very flat bed box. At the top it's only 1 to 1.7 centimeters wide, and at the bottom it's 1.7 to 2.7 centimeters wide. So it's very flat. They're handmade by members of the Dutch of the North Brabant bed study group. We put them up in the year 2000 using ladders, but in this as it's in the river area, the level of the water changes quite drastically. You need a wading trouser. I don't know if that's a correct word, but I hope you understand what it means. To check the bed boxes now and then, and it may even be that you need a boat. This is the same box, same situation. As you can see, the level of the water has risen for meters. So I actually started to worry about the beds might drown in the bed boxes, which hasn't happened luckily. Yeah, so we put them up in June 2000. We checked them for the first time in September. Well, I was expecting some results, but I was quite surprised by the results. We did this check by opening the boxes and taking out the beds to identify them in hand, which is a common practice in some parts of our country. And you heard several talks which it wasn't specifically mentioned, but I think it was done in the same way. So 11 boxes were occupied with approximately 21 Nathusius pipistrelles, so that's quite a surprising result for just 3 months. But 2 days later, I had another check. During this first check, we put back the beds in the boxes, but they didn't stay in, or most of them didn't. They started to fly around. So during the daytime, there was beds actually still partly in torpor. So there was strange fluttering flight, hardly able to fly actually. So it was quite clear to me that we were disturbing the beds. And so 2 days later, there were only 5 Nathusius in 2 boxes. So I think that's very obvious that it's a major disturbance. Well, I like to avoid disturbing beds. Also, as we in the bed study group, we do work voluntarily. So generally, we don't have permits, only for the winter counts, for the, counting the hibernating beds. We have permits, but most of the time we work without a permit. So this would need a permit. Since then, we checked the boxes. This picture was taken at another location, as you can see. By not opening them, just looking underneath, using a strong torch and binocular to see which species it is and how many beds are in. And in general, that works out fine. But can you identify Nathusius just on sight? So here's a picture of a common pipistrelle Nathusius. Nathusius on the left. It's somewhat bigger, it's somewhat lighter, but for the size, you might have to compare 2 animals directly, and in general, that's not the case, of course. So how do you know which of the 2 it is? Fortunately, there are some more characteristics. This is a Nathusius. The face is brown, not black, and the arms are black, so the face is somewhat lighter than the arms. And the face is about the same tone as the fur on the back. So if you close your eyes a little bit and look through your whiskers, and no, that's what you call it, eyelashes. You won't see any contrast between the fur and the face of the bat. The belly is gray, whitish even. You might mistake it for a myotis in that sense. Although at the throat, as you can see, it's more yellowish. So especially over here, behind the hind legs, you get this almost white color. The back is brown and not reddish brown, but that's you need to distinguish colors quite accurately to see the difference. Here you see a picture of a common pipistrelle. As you see, the face is black, almost black, at least darker than the fur. Once again, if you look through your eyelashes, you'll see that it's a dark face and with contrast to the fur on the back. Also, the color is just as dark as the arms. The belly is yellowish, also, if you could see it over here, it's not grayish or whitish as in Nathusius. And the fur is somewhat more red than in the Nathusius. But these are not very reliable characteristics. So there's there may be reasons for doubt. For instance, this is a common pipistrelle, and this is also a common pipistrelle. A dark animal with, as you can see, a grayish fur on the belly. So you might mistake it for Nathusius. So it's not very hard, these characters. Even so, sometimes if we have doubt, we might open a bed box and check the measures, and also the hairs on the tail are a useful character. Hairs grow further to the tip of the tail in Nathusius than in common pipistrelle. Also, that's not a very hard characteristic, but even so, it can be useful. So from this base, we identify these pipistrelles. Or Nathusius, we separate Nathusius from a common pipistrelle. From the ground, you generally can see how many bats are in this case 4. But sometimes you have this situation with, well, at least 7 bats. There's a group here on the left, and there might be more, so there's some doubt how many bats are actually in. But now and then you get this box which seems to be full. So you can count at least 9 bats, but there might be more. So you have to count the bats as they come out. And I did this for the first time in 2007, and with surprising results, 20 and 25 emerging bats with as Jeroen just showed, the large numbers that can go into such a box with a very flat, so you saw the size of this bed box. 25 bats go into such a small bed box, which is especially to people who do not really realize how small bats are very surprised by such numbers. And in a situation like this, with this weather, kind of weather, you don't have to go out and check wooden bed boxes like these, because they're not insulated at all. Well, you're wrong. Even under these conditions, a small number of Nathusius pipistrelles stay in these bed boxes, small numbers, but I think there's a slight increase in the last years. In December last year, I had 8 bats, but we had a sudden cold spell early this year, and the bats were vanished all of a sudden. You'll see a graph which shows this later on. So there can be harsh weather which causes them to leave the bed boxes, but at this moment, I've skated on this lake for several times, and bats were present in the bed boxes. So they can outstand quite low temperatures. Results show 2 peaks each year. These are weeks, as you see, 52 weeks. I do not visit the bed boxes each week. I try to, but I do not manage, especially the summer vacation is a period which typically is without results. But then again, if I'm busy with work, I do not always manage to do the check. But you have a peak in spring and a peak in autumn. As you can see, the peak in spring is much higher than in autumn in this case, and in this case it's the other way around. So it evolves, or it seems to evolve, and these peaks are expected to be correlated with migration. This must be, we expect it's mostly females that cause this increase, and females do not give birth to the young in Holland. There are no or hardly any nursery roosts of Nathusius in Holland. You have to go to the northeast, north of Germany, even the Baltic states, to find nursery roosts. But at this time of year, we do have large numbers of, or at least in spring and in autumn, we have large numbers of females. And from these graphs, you have to conclude that they are passing through. Because in winter, we have low numbers, and in spring, it increases, and in autumn, again, it increases. And the numbers we have in summer are probably all males, which stay more or less the year round. So that would be about the story, about which explains these yes?
When there is no bar, is it 0 or no?
It can be 0. That's I cannot always depict it. You need a special way to show a graph. You'll see a graph which shows 0 values later on, but in this graph you can't see the 0 values. But in general it means that I haven't been there, so that's no information. So that's explanation about these 2 peaks. And with these results, you can, if you go on for years, you can compare the results at different times of year. Here you see 2000, here 2011. The green bars are in April. So you see there's an increase in numbers in April. And the purple bars are September, and there's a sudden peak over here. But over this part, it seems to be more level. The orange part is summer, July, and the blue part is winter. So you can compare results for different seasons, which I think is appropriate, as these are migrating animals. So you're talking about different groups of animals during the year, which I think is very valuable information when you talk about migrating species. So here's a graph which shows the 0 values. Does this way of checking the boxes cause any disturbance? I think that's an important question, because if it does, then it's not very useful to go this often, as I'll only get declining numbers because of the disturbance. So in April, this is results in April 2004, when I checked the bed boxes 9 times during 9 days in a period of 11 days. Here are the 9 times that I went there. So it's not the 11 days that are depicted, but you have to use some imagination to fill that in. And it shows the presence of the beds in the 15 bed boxes. Number 16 is the total. So this is the total number of beds in the boxes. And this shows the change from day to day. And as you can see, it's very gradually. So I think that's a natural variation, not caused by, I think it's safe to say there's no disturbance. So this is what the bats do themselves, and it's not influenced by what I do, which is what I want to know, what's the natural situation. Twice a ring bat on Nathusius pipistrelle is ringing done in Europe, and Peter has done it for many years, and especially in Germany a lot of ringing is going on. Twice I found a ringed bat, the first time in August 2001, which had been ringed at a distance of 590 kilometers, but the year before. And September 2002, another female, which had been ringed over a month before at a distance of 442 kilometers. So as you can see, this species covers quite large distances during migration. Another species of bat has recently appeared. In 2010, we found a noctule in a bat. We'd have to darken the room a bit more to get a good big look at the bats. But I suppose you can see this one's quite a lot bigger than these ones on the right. So noctules and Nathusius can use the same bed box at the same time. Some other results from the surrounding of Sertogenbos to compare, because we get very different results at other locations. This is location Grote Wiel, location Vughse Heide, location Waterweergebied Nuland, and location Wamberg. Vughse Heide, forested area with some ponds. 50 bed boxes have been put up in 2003. This is the project where Erik Jansen told about yesterday. of two models, the triangular one and the flat one made of wood. Results common pipistrelle, long-eared bats, and a few noctules, and up till now one Nathusius pipistrelle. So very different from Grote Wiel. Here you see results. As you can see, the common pipistrelle is also a migratory species with a peak in the spring and a peak in the... No, that's a joke, of course. It's not a migratory species. But the results are similar to that of Nathusius. That's why I mention it. And also the long-eared bat also shows two peaks during the year. You might also conclude that it's a migratory species, which is not the case. But so during the nursery period, or even longer in common pipistrelle, but in the long-eared it's quite clear that during the nursery period bats are absent from the bed boxes, which probably tells something about the suitability of bed boxes for nurseries. And noctule, poor results, as you can see, only occasional observations. Another location, waterbingebied Nuland. These are Schweglere, or at least at the beginning these were Schweglere, so woodcrete boxes. But later on, wooden bed boxes have been added. Results are common pipistrelle, long-eared bats, noctules, and occasionally Nathusius. A bit more than Vughtse Heide, but still quite rare. But location Wamberg, we use only Schweglere boxes, mostly flat, 19 of these flat ones, and only one of these. I was happy to hear that this might be used by Nathusius and Bergsteins. We don't have Bergsteins in our surroundings, so I hope that's a lack of knowledge and not a lack of Bergsteins. 20 of these boxes were put up in 2011. As I said, 19 flat ones, one rounded. Results are both long-eared and Nathusius, and not occasionally Nathusius, but quite a few. And modern noctule so far. So we put up the boxes in February 2011, around this period. And as you see, we had quick results. Not as quick as at Grote Wiel, but still the bed boxes are used. These are only the results for Nathusius, of course, as I only want to discuss Nathusius from here on. And this year, so clearly as at the Grote Wiel, a peak in spring and a peak in autumn. The numbers are not as high as at Grote Wiel, but it's only the first year, so perhaps in the future we'll find similar numbers as at Grote Wiel. And of course it's interesting to compare results of Grote Wiel and Wamberg. These are the results for 2011. As you can see, this is a spring peak, and this is autumn peak, and it seems to be quite the same. But for this year, there seems to be, at least in the spring peak, difference for at least 6 weeks. This is week 18 with the highest number, and at week 12 we have the largest number at Grote Wiel. So quite close to each other, but still there seems to be a clear difference. In autumn the difference is not that clear. But that's only for the first year. We'll keep on following these bats in the years to come. And I'm very curious what will come out, at least when it comes to getting an impression of this migration that takes place. I think this is valuable information. And about monitoring, I want to say some things, a few things about it. What is monitoring? A definition, I think, might be measuring the carrying capacity of the surrounding landscape. How many bats are carried by the situation. Can you use bed boxes for long-term population monitoring? To my knowledge, this is not taking place in Europe so far, and I think it's worthwhile considering it. The numbers of bats show constant changing in these bed boxes, as I have showed. So what good is monitoring? But as we know from several researchers, hibernating bats, well, were considered to be constant in numbers, but proved to be quite dynamic. And also nursery roosts are thought to be static numbers, but that's not the case. There can be quite a lot of variation from day to day in nursery roosts. So monitoring bats is monitoring constantly changing numbers. You have to be aware of that in practically all sorts of monitoring in bats. So there's no difference between monitoring bats in bed boxes and in other situations. Can you monitor migrating Nathusius? I think these results at Grote Wiel show that there's a day-to-day and year-to-year correlation. And so these results must in some way reflect the carrying capacity of the surrounding landscape, which, as I said, might be a definition of monitoring. So I do think monitoring of bats in bed boxes is possible. Why use bed boxes for monitoring? Well, in Holland, and I think in most European countries, monitoring depends largely on volunteers. And checking bed boxes can be done during the day. You can be fairly sure that you will see bats. Identification can be documented with pictures, as I have showed. These pictures were made from the ground. You don't need to bring a ladder or anything. With modern, nowadays cameras, you can take fair pictures which allow identification from the ground at the height of when the bats are 3 meters or more above you. And checking bed boxes is fun. Erik showed results we have in Brabant from the last, say, 8 years. And so there are several people which are willing to follow the numbers of bats in bed boxes over a longer period, which is very promising for monitoring. And there are obvious similarities with winter counts, hibernating bats, and which is a very successful type of monitoring, as I suppose most of you know, in the Netherlands. And so I think that's also promising with regard to monitoring bats in bed boxes. Why not use bed boxes for monitoring? Well, a bed box is a man-made structure, and bats should not very much depend on such man-made structures, although you can argue that houses are man-made, and even forests are mostly dominated by the influence of humans is strong. But even so, I think it is a valid argument that bats should not depend entirely on man-made structures. And forests should be natural and without man-made boxes, which I think is a valid argument as well. So I wouldn't propose to hang up bed boxes in all Dutch forests or all European forests, for that matter. But here and there, I think it's it should be allowed, and it's useful. And so, at least in boxes which you don't have to open to see how many bats are in and which species is in, I think it's a valuable method to monitor bats. That's what I wanted to tell you.